Hello and good afternoon. It is time for this week's session where I want to offer some value to my community. And today I want to talk about building strong relationships right from the start. And so I've got about 20-ish minutes or so to get into this. And so if you have the time, please stick around. If you don't have the time, feel free to come back later, and this recording will be left here for you to go ahead and review. But today I want to talk about how to start relationships right from the beginning. And I know there's another topic or another discussion we can have about maintaining strong relationships. But today I want to talk about how to create strong relationships right from the beginning. And I happen to know there are people out there that struggle just to begin a conversation, just to start getting to know a stranger, or maybe you have a business or you're at work and you want to start getting better about that, but it's overwhelming you, or perhaps you're an introvert and you tend to be drained by lots of people and it makes you want to shy away from even building those relationships. Well, this teaching is going to be designed to help you overcome those challenges and try to sort of simplify the mindset behind how we go ahead and do that and build those strong relationships. So I want to start off first by saying that the primary goal of any great relationship is to give the person something of value that they didn't have before they met you. And this is true of any type of communication. I know public speaking is up there with death when it comes to the top things we fear. One thing that I've mentored and coached people on when it comes to public speaking is that the main goal when you get up on a stage is to give them something of value that they didn't have before you walked in the room. The same is true in a one-on-one conversation or a small group of 3 with your family. It doesn't matter. Communication, the goal is to give them something of value. So let that kind of rest on your mind as we get into the other details that we're going to talk about here. So I want to give you sort of 3 basic tips when it comes to, maybe 4 actually, three or 4 basic tips when it comes to initiating a strong relationship right from the beginning. And the first thing I want to talk about is that we should initiate rather than wait. And here's what I mean. A lot of times when we get this feeling inside of, I really want to get to know that person, I really want to reach out, a lot of times we think maybe they don't really want to talk to me, they don't really have time for me, they're too busy. We start inventing reasons. And so we wait and we're waiting for some sort of a cue, like the go ahead, that it's okay to go ahead and engage. I'm telling you right now, go ahead and just reach out and ask them if they'd like to set up some time with you. Believe it or not, me and a friend of mine not too long ago had this opportunity to reach out to a highly influential person. And we thought, no way they're even going to respond. Well, we went ahead and we reached out to them on one of the social media platforms. And within months, we were in their office. Didn't think that was going to happen. But you would be surprised how many people would turn around and say, yes, I'd love to spend time with you. So go ahead and initiate. And really, I want to point out this, that as loving people, we want to pursue rather than wait on others to pursue us. Those great relationship builders are always out there pursuing those relationships, even outside their comfort zone. So the second tip, when you're in that relationship, make a point to do more listening than talking. And sort of the rule of thumb that I always share with people is to do 80% of the listening. I know that I think maybe some of the instinct out there is to do 50-50. No. I think the goal in the beginning is to make it all about the other person. 80% listening and only 20% talking. And if that person wants to use more of that time in the beginning, that's great. I understand if that's the way the relationship continues long term, where it's always them talking and never you, that is a different issue. But what we're talking about here is how to begin a relationship strong. And you're going to do that by giving that person the platform to be able to encourage and listen and learn about that person. Come with questions too, aimed at getting to know them. Like, always be thinking, what can I ask them to get to know more about them in that initial conversation? And remember that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So applying that principle to that initial conversation will always give you a strong start. The next tip is to get to know them with the purpose of what they value. That's the purpose of getting to know them, finding out what it is that they care about, finding out what's going on in their life and what they actually value. And then your aim is then to give things that meet those needs or things that they care about. That's your ultimate intention. And here's the thing, it doesn't have to be some big, elaborate thing, right? And it can be something simple, right? A lot of times we make it bigger than it actually is. But here are just a few examples. Share a book recommendation, a book that you've been reading, or something else that you read or watched recently that inspired you. Share those things, because chances are, if it inspires you, it probably inspires them. Offer encouragement. Be present in their pain or their struggle. Sometimes it's just being there and saying nothing is the best thing that you can do, because so few people do it. Teach them something. If there's something that you know that they need and they don't know it, share that knowledge, right? Something as simple as teaching a basic principle or just technical knowledge, whatever it may be, anything new that they need that you can share is beneficial. And so the next tip that I want to share is this idea of the golden rule versus the platinum rule. Now, I've shared this thing in a social media post before, and not everybody responded to it positively. So I wanted to take this opportunity to explain it a little bit more. And also, if you're on the broadcast right now and you have any comments or questions, feel free to post them. I'm watching them. I can respond to them on the fly. So golden rule versus the platinum rule. First of all, the golden rule comes from the Bible. Jesus said it, to treat others the way you want to be treated, right? And so first off, I in no way am saying that we're going to upgrade it to the platinum rule and somehow override what Jesus said, right? And so I know my Christian brothers and sisters get a little upset at me when I get into this conversation, but I'm going to explain that. So first things first, when it comes to the golden rule, we all want to be loved, heard, and valued, and we want to know that our lives matter. Like every single one of the people on the planet want these things, right? So even when our way of seeing things doesn't align with others, we still want to be loved, valued, heard. We want to know that our lives matter. It doesn't matter who they are or where they come from or what their walk of life is. Everybody wants that, right? So here's a couple principles to think about. We don't have to agree or like the person to communicate love, respect, and value towards another person. I'll say it again. We don't have to like or agree with everything another person says to be able to communicate love, respect, and value towards another person. It is possible to do those things and really not agree with what they're saying. It's okay. So in order to do the golden rule, we're going to have to value those kinds of things. Secondly, we don't need to take responsibility for defending God. He can handle himself, right? Like a lot of us think that we need to defend God, like he needs lawyers, right? Our job is simply to represent him with love. That's our role, right? And here's an analogy that was shared with me once before. Sometimes when we carry a message to somebody that they don't agree with, they get angry and say, I don't like this message. Well, I want you to think about a chef and a waiter. Who cooks the food? The chef cooks the food. So when the customer complains at the waiter about the food being awful, who are they really complaining about? They're complaining about the chef. The waiter is just the carrier of that food. So when you deliver a message that isn't something that the person agrees with, consider this. They got to take it up with the chef, not with the waiter, right? You're just the waiter. You're just there to be a listening ear, to share what's on your heart, to build that connection, right? And I know that some topics are tough in the beginning of creating a relationship, but remember what I shared. We don't have to agree or like somebody to communicate love, respect, and value towards another person. So here's where this platinum rule comes into play. So if you're just joining, I talked about the golden rule, right? Treat others the way that you want to be treated. But the platinum rule says treat others the way that they want to be treated. But here's where we can get this wrong. And I think this is where some of the frustration comes when I bring this topic up to certain people. What I'm not saying about the platinum rule is that we're not giving someone something that's immoral or wrong just because they want it. That's not what I mean by treating others the way that they want to be treated. What I'm saying, right, is that we care enough about them to love them the way that speaks most to their heart. And so here is an example of that. How many of you have heard of the 5 love languages? Right? 5 love languages are acts of service, physical touch, words of affirmation, tangible gifts, and quality time. These are all ways that people like to give and receive love. And if you think about it, the way that you find it easiest to love others is probably the way that you like to receive it best. And what we end up doing a lot of times is because acts of service is really high on our list, we tend to do and do and do and do for our loved ones. And then all of a sudden they look at us one day and they're like, I don't even feel like you care. And you're kind of like, have I not poured out all of my efforts to show you that I care? And you can't seem to comprehend why they don't even get it. They don't acknowledge it. They don't seem to catch that from you. It's probably because they're operating under a different love language. Perfect example. My wife is an acts of service person. I am a quality time person. If I were to rate them, acts of service ranks about number 4 on my list. This means that when I'm doing dishes in the house, when I'm helping my wife out with schooling the kids, when I'm sharing in the household activities, and when I'm getting involved in things that really matter to her and I'm putting my hands to good use, my hand and feet, she feels like I really care and value the things that matter to her. And for me, what that means is when she spends time with me doing whatever, it doesn't have to be productive. The key here is that she's spending time with me. I tend to feel love. And where this can get tricky is I want to love her by spending time with her, and she wants to love me by doing and doing and doing. But because acts of service isn't my love language, the more she does, the less she has time available to spend time with me, the more unloved I begin to feel. And in the same way, if I continue to try to spend time, and I don't actually do those acts of service, she's also going to feel diminished in that love tank. So when we think about the platinum rule, we're still living out the golden rule, right? Because the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. But the way I want to be treated is I want to be heard and valued for what I care about. And so does the other person. So when we apply that principle in terms of the platinum rule, we're simply saying, hey, I know that you prefer quality time. I know that you prefer gifts. So that is the way in which I'm going to choose to love you. And hopefully that will be reciprocated, right? And I think it does tend to get reciprocated a lot of times when we're able to love others the way that they want to be loved. And that's what the platinum rule is all about. Here's another one to dive a little bit deeper. Let's look at the love language of quality time, right? And zoom in just a little bit. Here's where quality time doesn't just automatically mean I'm going to give them my time because that's what they want. Ask yourself this question: are they an introvert or an extrovert? What's the difference between an introvert and extrovert? I think a lot of times this gets confused as introverts are not good with people, extroverts are good with people. That's completely false. It's completely false. So get that out of your head now. The only difference between an introvert and an extrovert is an introvert is drained spending time with a bunch of people for hours. And an extrovert often gets charged up by it. That's really the only difference. They're both great with people. They both can be equally loving. They both can be equally participating in a crowd. It's just how much energy is left at the end of it. That's the key question. Now, here's where this comes in handy as it relates to the platinum rule: treat others the way they want to be treated. If the introvert's love language is quality time, asking them to spend 6 hours in a crowd of people with you is probably not going to help them feel loved. Even though it's quality time and you're hanging out with them, they're getting drained by it. So if you're asking them to go do a bunch of stuff with a bunch of people all day long, that's probably not the way they want to be loved. On the other hand, if your quality time love language person is an extrovert, asking them to sit around and have deep philosophical conversation for 6 hours is also probably going to drive them crazy, because they want to be among people. They may want to go bowling or go to a party or go hang out at a busy restaurant because that's where they get their energy from. So knowing people enough as you build that relationship in the beginning is what's going to give you the knowledge that you need to know how to love them well. So I want to point this out because I think we go wrong when we're building this too, right? And so I want to talk about a few things on how to make a bad first impression. These are things you want to avoid doing if you want to establish a strong relationship right from the beginning. Don't do these things, okay? But you'd be surprised. I meet people all the time that do these things, and then they wonder why they have a hard time connecting with people. So the first one, right, is that person will start, or I'll just say we will start that conversation seeking to get something rather than learn something. So when you enter a new relationship, your aim is, remember, to give them value that they didn't have before they met you. If your first intention is, what can I get out of this relationship first, before you even learn anything about them, you're automatically sending a message to that other person that you care more about yourself than you do about them. Bad idea, not a way to make a good first impression. The second thing is, while they're talking, we're already planning our response. We're not really listening to the 2 ears, right? Sometimes I think it's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? 2 ears and 1 mouth. We're supposed to spend more time listening than talking, not thinking about our response to what they're saying. And meanwhile, we're missing everything we're saying, and we're missing all the important details that can teach us things about how to love them well and how to build that relationship strong. Now, this next one is a big one, so I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on it. This one is that we prejudge others before we even know them. And sometimes we prejudge people that we know, and that's another issue. I'm going to talk about that. But let's get into this, because I think some of you might go, no, I love everyone. I'm very accepting of everybody. Okay, let's look at it this way. Consider things like this: stickers on a car, stickers on a laptop that have a message, quotes that person surrounds themselves with or refers to, social media posts, household pictures and messages, things that people hang on their wall, what a person says in the moment. I want you to think all of these things send little tiny messages that we pick up on. We send those same messages with those things as well. And so if you think that you don't prejudge, consider things like this. What if any of those pictures, quotes, social media posts, things on the walls, the things that people say in the moment communicate a message about politics, about religion, about their personal views, the way their voice tone is as they communicate it, or maybe they just have what some people call the RBF. I'm not going to tell you what that means if you don't know. Or there's certain words that they trigger. I'll give you an example. For me, there's certain people that say to me when I meet them for the first time, "What's up, boss?" or "What can I do for you, chief?" Those are trigger words for me. That drives me insane, because something inside my brain goes, who's this person think it is? They're calling me boss. It comes off as arrogant. Now, they may not be trying to be arrogant, but it triggers me, and it will cause me to prejudge them if I'm not careful. Another thing is body posture. The person sitting with their arms crossed, it tends to be a closed posture. You might think they're closed off and unwelcoming. Another thing is that they remind you of someone else. Maybe they said or do something that makes you think of somebody else that bothered you in the past, and you're already prejudging them and projecting that onto that person, but they're not the same person and you don't know them. Or they said something that reminded you of something else that someone that hurt you before said, and now you think they're just like that person, right? Or they act like someone that you don't like, right? This kind of stuff happens all the time, and it's like until somebody brings it up, you think to yourself, no, I'm pretty accepting it. No, we're all doing this all the time. But it's one thing to get the thought, it's one thing to feel the emotion, but it's our response that ultimately determines the direction of that relationship going forward. It's okay to have feelings and thoughts. We can't stop that. But what we can do is choose our response. And so sometimes we also prejudge someone that we know because of things they did to hurt us in the past. But people can and do change. So each time you enter into that conversation, let's say it's been 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, a family member that you have been struggling to build a relationship with or rebuild a relationship with, and you just can't seem to get over that hurdle. A lot of times it's because those family members are unable to let go of the things that they did in the past. And we don't look at them with a fresh set of eyes and look at them like they were a new person that we're meeting, and we're seeking to encourage and get to know them. That's the approach that we want to take if we're ever going to bridge that gap. And there's issues like forgiveness and mercy and grace. We got to let go. And it sets us free way more than it sets them free. It's not excusing what they did, but it's setting you free to be able to love them well and go into a positive relationship, even though that past hurt is still there. And here's the last thing. You want to remember that hurt people, but loved people love people. So when we love people well, it enables them to love well. Loving people that hurt you isn't hard when you recognize that it says more about them and what's happening inside their heart than it does about you. And when we recognize that they're hurt and the ugly things they say and do is more about them and what happened to them, it should bring about compassion and empathy in your heart, which completely changes the dynamic and the way that conversation goes from that point forward. And so, ultimately, the last thing I'll say about this is when we're struggling, when we find ourselves getting angry, frustrated, offended, whatever it may be, it almost always means there's something inside of us too that has yet to be healed. So that's where we got to do that deep soul work to figure out what's happening inside of us so that we can, really begin to see them through the eyes of love instead of the hurt that's been plaguing us. Much like the hurtful things they do is seen through the filter of things that have hurt them. And so there's a John Maxwell quote that says, leaders always touch a heart before they ask for a hand. That's the law of connection. I think when it comes to building relationships, the main thing we want to do in the beginning is just focus on their heart. If we can focus on their heart and get to know what really moves them at the heart level, that's how you build a strong relationship. Give them the things that they really are looking for based on what you've learned. And you'll do that best by spending more time just listening and asking questions than you ever will talking about yourself and seeking to get something out of it. It will organically develop. So share your thoughts on this message. And make sure that if you have any comments or anything that you would like to see me talk about in the future, I would love feedback on what you would like to hear about. Totally open to that. Or if you have any questions about this or other things, post those comments below. Also, just a quick coming soon, I will be offering coaching for 30 minutes a week after these sessions going forward. There'll be a small $47 fee, but I want to let you know that's a per month fee. Essentially, for $47 a month, you will get 2 free hours of coaching per month on anything that you want to talk through. And that's why I'm here. So after these sessions in the future, there'll be 30 minutes. You'd get a separate link, 30 minutes each week. Right. So that is an offering that's coming. If you want more information on that, please send me a message and we can talk about it. And lastly, remember to lead well, live on purpose, and honor God with your life. And I will see you all next week at this time. Have a great day.